hope you're keeping well. On our member channel, we're just coming to the end of our section on figure 8 work. I think we've got something like 35 films now on figure 8, and we've just finished up by looking at figure 8 with the elbows, so pad work, application and so on. Of course, if you want access to that and all our other instructional content, click the join button below, and for a modest monthly payment you can get access to around 100 films and downloads now on all aspects of Systema training. So we're finishing the figure 8. The question is, what are we going to do next? A question or a request that has come up several times from the guys here and online is for us to look at improvised weapons. So I thought what I'll do today is just run through the subject of improvised weapons from a Systema perspective, because as you might expect, we have some different points of view from other approaches. The first thing is, let's look at the term itself, improvised weapons. So to my mind, an improvised weapon is something that is around you, it is in the environment you're in, and you pick up and you use it for offensive or defensive purposes. If you take something out with the intent to use it as a weapon for defense or offense, that is no longer an improvised weapon, that is a weapon. Now that can include actual weapons, of course. So if I went out carrying a knife, that's obviously I'm going out armed. However, if I take a screwdriver out with me with the intent to use it as a weapon, then that is still classed as a weapon in law. The thing is, in English law at least, it's the question of intent. So in that sense, if I'm a person who likes lots of this, I think the term is tactical kit, you know, you can buy things like a pen made of, I don't know what they're made of, titanium or something, but a pen that will punch through steel. So obviously a kind of strong object, but that is designed, it's not designed to be a pen, it's designed to be like a Kubaton, right? It's designed to be a weapon. To my mind, that's not an improvised weapon. Again, that's a weapon. So to me, what makes a weapon improvised is that it's something that just happens to be around. If I'm in a club or a bar and something sort of kicks off, I might pick up a chair to use. That's an improvised weapon. I haven't brought that chair to the club with me just in case. Right? If I'm out somewhere and something happens, I might put my hand in my pocket. What have I got? I've got some keys. Perhaps I can use those as an improvised weapon. We'll talk about that in a minute. So basically it's something that just happens to be there. Now, of course, as we get into this, we can learn to carry things that may be useful without being weapons. Keys are an obvious example. There's all sorts of stuff. That's what we're going to be going through on the member channel. Now, there are two approaches to this, because if we look at traditional martial arts, obviously we have a wide range of weapons. So in the Chinese systems I studied, for example, we learned a broadsword, we learned a straight sword, we learned a staff, there's spear, and you know, martial arts have tons of other weapons as well. You've got your obvious battlefield weapons, but then you think about improvised weapons as well, in an interesting way. Things that started off as, well, farming tools originally. So things like nunchuckers, rice flails, kama were sickles. These things became weapons. They were brought into the martial arts as weapons. Now the approach there generally is the same as for your empty hand stuff. So if I've got my nunchucker, I'll probably learn some sort of kata or form. If I've got my sickles, I learn a form. I learn techniques with that particular weapon. The Systema approach, however, is a little different. So yes, we need to be aware of all these different types of weapons have different characteristics. A stick I'm going to use in a different way from a rope or a belt, for example, because, you know, one is rigid and the other is flexible. I can still maybe hit with both, I can still in some ways tie someone up with both, but the usage is different. But the emphasis in Systema is not so much picking up a particular object and learning movements and techniques with that, but to use the body movement and the way we move generally, and we bring the weapon or the object into that. So that way it should mean, in theory, you can pick up anything and use it as a weapon. I don't have to learn a chair form, I don't have to learn a stick form, etc, etc, etc. If I've got these principles in the body, it's just a case of then adapting in order to use the object most efficiently. So let's come back to the keys. The other thing when we get into improvised weapons is there's all sort of myths and well, nonsense is a polite word that spreads with this sort of thing. And you see in these, you know, learn self-defense in 10-minute sort of articles or even some courses, the keys is usually the first thing that crops up. And you've got this amazing bit of advice. If you're walking back to your car late at night and someone comes out and attacks you, you throw your keys in his face, and that gives you some time to escape. And of course then you run to your car and presumably you go, oh shit. So if you are going to do that, if you are going to follow that advice, then get a big bunch of old keys. Most of us has got a set hanging up in the cupboard somewhere, but you know, find yourself a big bunch of old keys and use those. Already, see, we're going away from this idea of improvised weapons to something I carry to use as a weapon. Can keys be used for defence? Well, there are some things you can do. For example, we can use the keys to prod and poke. We can use the keys to pinch. Basically, we can get some sort of pain compliance methods with the keys, but that's stuff you need to practice. And of course you also need to bear in mind things like if your attacker's wearing a thick heavy coat, you know, you're not really going to be doing much with the key on poking. But the best way to start training this stuff is what we've been doing this morning. We've been doing some filming for the member channel, and what I said to the guys is, right, just put whatever you got in your pockets, whatever you bring with you, put it on the table there, and now we'll just pick something up and we'll start using that. The best thing to do is just have your partner grab you and just start applying this work and see what sort of results you get. And this is the procedure we follow for everything, whether we're working with belts or sticks or clothing or chairs, whatever it is. You start first of all by making yourself familiar with the object, just moving it around a bit, moving yourself around with it, and then you can start seeing how you apply it in quite a static situation first. So if you're using a chair, you might get your partner to grab the leg of the chair, and I start to see how I can lock his arm up simply by doing this kind of movement. And again, that movement comes from me. It's not a technique I apply with the chair. If I've got this freedom and mobility in the body, I've got awareness of my own structure, my external and internal structure, my psychological, emotional state and everything else. I know how to apply force, I know how to absorb force, I'm able to move out the way of things and put myself in a good position. All of that then comes out into the chair, and so I can start getting good results. Another aspect of that is taking an object, so let's stick with the chair for example, and you say to a person, give me 10 uses for that object. So you see, you start to broaden people's way of thinking. A chair, obviously you can sit on it, but you can use a chair to hold a door open. You can stand on a chair in order to reach a high shelf. You know, you start thinking of all these different ways you can use an item or object just in normal everyday life. Forget about self-defense even. This is important because the Systema mindset when it comes to self-defense, if we're talking a dangerous situation, is our everyday mindset. We don't suddenly switch into combat mode. You know, you're kind of in combat mode all the time, but not in that twitchy, reactive way. I'm ready to respond. I'm not walking around in the state of high alert like this all the time, but as this stuff becomes more and more inbuilt, it just becomes your normal response rather than a reaction to move, to take yourself out of harm's way and to do something to control or end the situation. So the more you work with everyday objects and think of using them in different ways, the more your body and your mind will be ready to react should you need to use those in a defensive situation. But I think what people have to get out of the mindset of as, oh right, I've got this improvised weapon, I've got my keys, now I'm super powerful. You're not any more powerful than when you had the weapon. And we have to be careful about this with weapons in general. You know, someone carrying something, let's say a knife, it gives them a sense of power sometimes, or safety, which is, you know, can be false, can be very false. And the problem is, if that is taken away, it takes all your power and safety with it. So you should never really invest anything emotionally in whatever you're using, which is why I like to just pick things up, use everyday items. It's just a chair, you know, it's not a super tactical thermonuclear chair that's going to enable me to take on a bike gang. It's just a chair. If I use it while I'm moving, then I put it down, and it's just a chair. And if you're going to walk around town with a pen and a set of keys in your belt, it's almost then you're waiting for something to happen. You almost want something to happen, so you can whip out your tactical pen and start hammer fisting left, right and centre, you know. It's not really a good mindset to be in. As I say, much better just to be calm and relaxed. If something happens, we're ready, then we can activate. We can use things if we need to. If we don't, then we don't. So there's a few thoughts on improvised weapons. As I said, we're going to be running this on the member channel now, probably for about the next month, 6 weeks or so. If you'd like to access that instructional content, click the join button below for details. Oh, I had a request come in for knife throwing as well, so I'm going to be working some of that in. Not so much from a practical point of view, because I can't think of many situations I've been in where knife throwing would be practical, but you never know. But really more from the idea of learning coordination and precision and using the breathing and the posture and everything else. It's a very nice method for enhancing all those things. Anyway, that's what we've got lined up. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, please pop them below. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.